Yesterday, on Monday, August 18th, President Trump, following up his meeting with President Putin of Russia last Friday, met with President Zelensky of Ukraine, amongst other European leaders, to discuss conflict resolution in the Russia-Ukraine war. So without further ado, there is a lot to cover, so let's jump right into it, which the day started with Zelensky arriving at the White House. Upon exiting his vehicle, he was greeted by President Trump. They shake hands, they walk into the White House. Not 30 seconds later, we have the exact same format as we did the last time Zelensky came to the White House, with him and Trump sitting on this couch and 50 other members of the press in the room. And let me just say right now, to start off, I absolutely hate this format. I don't know who decided on it. I don't know why this is how we do the meetings with the European leaders, particularly Zelensky. But it's terrible because you have a bunch of reporters in the room with them who are shouting questions over each other like children as Trump picks out, I guess, the person who shouts the loudest or the best. And then the questions that the reporters ask are usually irrelevant questions that are just designed to cause drama. Because at the end of the day, all these news outlets, right or left, they want the drama. They want Zelensky and Trump to fight. They want everything to blow up. They don't care about human lives. All they care about is their profits. They don't care about these negotiations. They would rather have a fight. So they ask stupid questions to Trump like, oh, who do you think is in a better negotiating position, Russia or Ukraine? Knowing damn well that Russia, being the second or third most powerful country in the world, is obviously going to have a certain amount of cards in their hand, trying to make Trump insult Zelensky to his face. And then they asked Zelensky a question, and this was the exact way that the reporter worded it. Are you willing to sacrifice more men for the following years in an endless war with Russia? Or are you going to negotiate? Like, why are you guys trying to pin them in corners and put them against each other? Well, we already know the answer. It's for news headlines, it's for profits, it's for money. To me, it's absolutely ridiculous, and we need to never do this format ever again. There's got to be a way that we can have it broadcasted to the people without having all of these media pundits shouting over each other like child. The first major point that I noted during the press conference with Zelensky, and I think this is going to be very good news for the people who are very much for Ukraine, the reporters asked Trump if this line of negotiations, the meeting with Putin last Friday, these talks with Zelensky, maybe a future trilateral meeting, if these peace talks don't result in the war being solved, is this the end of the line for the American people? Is this the end of the line for American support? And Trump said no. And I think this is good news. I think this is a good stance for Trump to take, because as much as we might not want money to go to Ukraine, which Trump is not necessarily giving money to Ukraine in the same way that Biden was, but we'll come back to that. I think it's a good stance by Trump, though, to say that he'll protect Ukraine, because at the end of the day, we don't want Russia taking that entire territory. They are our rival. They are competing with AI technology, competing with nuclear weapons, a multitude of other things. Economies are directly against each other. They're a member of the BRICS alliance. So it is important that we do not let them imperialistically conquer land of European countries that are looking to be our allies and possibly trade with us. Not only that, but it is the right thing to do. Russia should not be able to take the entirety of Ukraine and decide the democratic process for another nation that has been sovereignly independent since 1991. What I mentioned earlier about Trump not directly giving money to Ukraine is that Trump stated, and he reiterated this on a interview with Fox and Friends, which is a terrible that is the cringiest shit ever. But on an interview with Fox and Friends the following morning, he reiterated this by saying the NATO countries have agreed to jump from 2% of GDP being provided to 5% that is guaranteed, as opposed to the 2%, which was more of a suggestion. And when countries didn't pay it, there wasn't much that would be done to enforce it. as opposed to now these countries are all giving 5%. So Trump is selling the weapons to European powers, and this is in his words, selling the weapons to the European powers at full price, which are then doing whatever they want with the weapons, which is then giving them to Ukraine. This next point that I mentioned, it's sad that I have to bring this up, but I know it's going to be talked about. President Zelensky showed up in an all-black suit, which I seen people on Twitter dubbing as funeral attire, which to me is like kind of funny. But at the end of the day, I don't care what Zelensky wears. Zelensky could turn up in a wife beater in jeans. It doesn't matter. If he's here to make peace and willing to do negotiation, why are we worried about optics and photos and how somebody looks? Don't worry about these minute details when we have thousands of people dying every single day. The main points of the first part of the day, which is this meeting with Trump and Zelensky, I feel, was that U.S. did make security guarantees to Ukraine, which involves the selling of weapons to Europe to give to Ukraine, which includes the U.S. Patriot defense system, which is going to help Ukraine stop a lot of future and current Russian bombing attempts. We then move into the meeting that Trump had with the several European leaders that arrived at the White House, which included Vladimir Zelensky, which was started by Trump greeting all the world leaders and giving a little bit of a prologue, which I thought all the compliments that he gave to all the world leaders were nice. There was a funny moment where Macron was kind of like, gave him a little bump on the shoulder, which showed a little bit of camaraderie. But it was nice to see all the European leaders talk. You see the leader of France talk in his French accent, the leader of Britain talk in his British accent, the leader of Finland, the leader of Germany. You have all of these prominent European leaders, and it does show strong unity between Ukraine, Europe, and the United States, which I think is a good picture to show Russia that we are all on the same page here. Zelensky spoke after Trump, reiterated his concerns for security guarantees, said that he was happy that President Trump was willing to have this meeting, and said that him giving security guarantees to Ukraine was groundbreaking. He then made another request, which I think we can all agree is reasonable. Upon a ceasefire or the ending of the conflict, a truce, an armistice, whatever you want to call it, there will be a humanitarian exchange of all prisoners on both sides, which I think is a more than reasonable request. There is no reason why after the conflict is over, Russian men and Ukrainian men alike should not be able to return home to their families. They should not be captured POWs for years to come or used as leverage. There should be a 100% humanitarian exchange of prisoners. If anybody disagrees with this, I don't know what's wrong with you. After Trump and Zelensky, we then had the European leaders all take a turn and speak and emphasize their concerns and needs and their overall thoughts on the situation. Starting with Friedrich Merz from Germany, the Chancellor of Germany, who said that Trump opened the door to peace by meeting with Putin last Friday. He emphasized the importance of a ceasefire going forward after the next meeting, which I think is going to be the ultimate goal of the bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky, which seems to be the way going forward, which will then possibly be followed by a trilateral meeting with Trump being there. So the Chancellor of Germany basically just emphasized we need to stop the loss of life. We need to make sure that a ceasefire is obtained as soon as possible, which will hopefully be right after the next deal. But I want to focus on the other part that he said, that Trump opened the door to peace by meeting with Vladimir Putin. That's from the Chancellor of Germany. And we're going to cycle back to a couple of the other European leaders later. But a lot of them praised President Trump for meeting with Putin. They didn't offer any criticisms. Despite this, you see American citizens and media alike criticizing Trump for rolling out the red carpet for Putin, for not treating him like a war criminal, for clapping as he's walking up, for shaking his hand and smiling while he did it, even though we have photos of Democrats doing the exact same thing. Absolutely ridiculous, the amount of nitpicking from the American people, when even the other leaders of different countries see that Trump genuinely wants peace. Emmanuel Macron did an interview with NBC and said Trump genuinely wants peace, as the CNN or NBC or CNN reporter, whoever he did the interview with, is trying to press him on Trump's little snippet that leaked out that was
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds.
As in, Trump meant he's going to do a deal for me because I'm just so special and he's my best friend and he's going to do a deal for me. Macron almost is just like, I just think that Trump genuinely wants a peace deal. And they did a similar interview with the leader of Finland, Alexander Stubb, played the same clip for him, and he literally sighs in response.
You're talking about he gets on the phone with Putin, then you all go into the Oval Office. There was a moment where I believe Trump was talking to your colleague, Keir Starmer.
I just noticed this, and I didn't point it out in the video. But in that video, she states that Trump is talking to Keir Starmer. Meanwhile, in the clip she plays, you can see Keir Starmer talking to somebody else. Trump is actually talking to Emmanuel Macron, the leader of France. She confused the leader of France with the leader of the United Kingdom. And this is the mainstream media. Just had to point that out. Resume regularly scheduled program.
What is your response when Trump says something, even at this point, that he believes that Putin will make a deal for him because of him?
Well, I mean, I've been involved in peace mediation before, and I think that President Trump is genuinely trying to bring this war to an end.
Then goes on to explain about how everybody here wants peace, and he sees the confidence as a good thing, as Macron stated, that he sees the president's confidence as a good thing. Meanwhile, the American people are trying to nitpick while Trump is trying to solve a conflict that is resulting in the deaths of thousands and thousands of people. We need to nitpick that he said, "for me," during the peace treaty. Like, it's a nothing burger. I want to focus back in on another thing that the president of Finland said, Alexander Stubb. He said that more has been done in the past 2.5 weeks for peace in this conflict than in the last 3 years, which is undoubtedly a dig at the Biden administration.
Much, Mr. President. I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years.
I don't know how you guys want to spin this. There is no way you can look back at this conflict and say, yeah, the way that President Joe Biden handled it was the right way. And there's no way you can look back at what President Trump is doing right now by meeting with Putin and meeting with these European leaders based on the unbiased opinion of the president of Finland and say that he's doing something bad. Trump does genuinely want peace, and I think we should support these efforts as they will be saving so many lives. Giorgia Meloni, the leader of Italy, stated that she felt a change in the wind in the air since President Putin met with Trump, and that she's hearing something that they might be willing to come to the table at least, because Biden and the other members of the U.S. administration prior did not communicate with Russia at all in the past years previous to now. It's just absolutely astonishing to me that we have Giorgia Meloni, the leader of Italy, Alexander Stubb, the leader of Finland, Emmanuel Macron, the leader of France, Keir Starmer, the leader of Britain, and Vladimir Zelensky himself, the leader of Ukraine, all applauding Trump's efforts to bring Russia to the table. Meanwhile, you have so many citizens in the media, as previously stated, constantly criticizing and nitpicking every little possible thing, which to me is not worth it. And it makes the U.S. appear weak to a different rival nation like Russia. Following this public start to the meeting, the European leaders and Trump convened in the Oval Office for a reported 4 hours, which was then separated by a 40-minute phone call with President Putin that Trump had to discuss the possible setup of a trilateral meeting and to inform President Putin of what Trump and the other European leaders had discussed to that point. After the phone call with Putin, Trump returned to the Oval Office and gave a debriefing to the other European leaders of what was discussed, which, from what I can tell, is about the end of the day's events. So far today and the day following the negotiations, I have seen conflicting reports that Russia is apparently not coming to the table or, maybe prolonging or stalling the process, which is something that is not surprising. Putin at the end of the day is a dictator. But hopefully these negotiations do result in a bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin followed by a trilateral meeting with Trump, Zelensky, and Putin. But I genuinely thought that Trump did a pretty good job with these European leaders. It seemed like they were actually able to come to a lot of compromises. I've been hearing good things from all the European leaders who participated in the event. The NATO staff had nothing but high praise to say during the meeting. And hopefully this is something that will push us towards an everlasting peace solution towards Russia and Ukraine, although I am still skeptical at what the outcome will be. This war ending, considering the absolutely astonishing casualty amounts we've seen since the beginning, should be a bipartisan agreement. The war absolutely needs to come to an end as soon as possible. And I don't understand why everybody feels the need to criticize President Trump for rolling out the red carpet for Putin, when at the end of the day, this could have been possibly the only way to get Putin to come to the table at all. We can try to act like it's not a big deal when the leaders of Russia and the United States meet, but this was the first time that the leaders of the countries had met in multiple years. It was in the middle of mutual territory. We're trying to get Putin to come to the table. I don't see anything wrong with a little bit of brown nosing. I don't think it's going to boost Putin's ego. It's not going to give him any combat advantage to have a little bit of brown nosing. Not to mention, amongst the brown nosing, we still flew a B-2 stealth bomber right over Putin's head as he landed. And if you really pay attention, Trump's red carpet that he walked on versus the tiny little strip that Putin walked from the plane to Trump on, there was a difference there. Trump is about optics. The B-2 stealth bomber incident reminded me of if you take your neighbor that you just hate and have had beef with for years to your house and you make them a nice dinner, but at the same time you have 5 of your vicious pit bulls just staring at them ready to eat them. The stealth bomber was definitely a display of strength, and I don't understand why people aren't praising that despite criticizing everything else. If you're going to notice everything and eagle eye everything, you got to at least provide some level of praise for the things that are good. Otherwise, in my opinion, you're one of the cult members. But anyway, that's all I have to say about this slew of diplomacy that has happened last Monday. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.